Surrey. I got a Surrey postcode as well, so I'm basically not London, but you know how Croydoners like to class themselves as being in London. Yes, Brandy is so underrated, so underrated. I really encourage you guys to look at her latest project. She released it just a couple months ago, but it's a whole vibe, a whole vibe. So what are we going to be talking about today? I really want to have a conversation about the dark side of emotions. You know, we always talk about the shadow work and dealing with the dark side and dealing with the dark self, but I feel like a lot of the times when it comes to shadow work, we often sometimes can use it as an escape mechanism to take us away from the feelings that we want to feel. So why do I say that? Sometimes the approach to shadow work is, okay, how can I shadow work helps to polarize a perspective. So for example, if you get into an argument with someone, you know, you're able to look into yourself, self-reflect, and be like, actually, I may have overreacted in that moment. I may have gone a bit too over the top. I may have not taken this into account. I may have not taken that into account. Absolutely good. That's great. That's one side of shadow work. But I feel like with shadow work, there's a holistic process that comes alongside that, because as well as you're able to uncover, you know, where you may be going wrong or where you may have overstepped the mark, there's also acknowledging where that place was, where these rooted feelings and emotions are coming from, right? So for example, and I've actually written a few things, because a lot of the lives that I do, it's off my own little free writes that I do. I'm kind of just exploring different concepts, exploring different feelings within myself, and this particular thing came out of just actually having a real life conversation with myself. Yes, I've been doing shadow work for a good number of years now, but there's a place that I feel that a lot of us that are on this journey doing the shadow work, addressing all of this, the shadows, being accountable, we have to be careful we don't skip over the things that we genuinely actually feel. So for example, using the example of love, right? Yes, for you to fully attract the type of relationship that you desire and that you'd like to experience, yes, you have to learn how to really love yourself, because nobody can really learn how to love you if you don't really know how to love yourself. However, that doesn't take away the fact that you know, you still have this yearning for love, and you still have this yearning for appreciation. So if you go for a prolonged time to where you're not actually experiencing appreciation, you're not actually experiencing that love that you're deep inside just yearning for, there can be a lot of complexes that takes place. And I feel like, especially with spiritual people, we have to be careful of the tendency to over justify certain things. And even in the justification, I've given an angle there, but also in the justification of how other people may display themselves, how other people may, you know, we can always understand why some people may do some of the things that they may do. Hi Trina. We may understand, you know, if you see someone acting up, you may be like, okay, this is this influence and this is why they're doing what they're doing. Yes, okay, understanding. But we have to be careful that we don't over justify certain behaviors that are just fully wrong. And we are human beings. We deserve to not be trampled on. We deserve to not be taken advantage of. We deserve to not have people to you know, override our vulnerability, you know, take advantage of these different types of things. So I really want to have a real conversation just about that, because it's not a place that we often explore. And I feel like some of this also fits into the spiritual bypassing. You know, we bypass a lot of stuff and then add spirituality with a little bit of sprinkle here, sprinkle there, magic here, magic there. But we have to be careful we're not finding other escape mechanisms just to cover up some of the wounds that we're actually feeling. So just want to put that there as kind of a general of what I want to be talking about today. And if anything triggers up for you guys, this is an open discussion. You guys can share what if you feel like you've experienced this yourself, if you've seen this within the community or within other people or whatever, and you just want to share whatever you've noticed with that, then I'd really appreciate that, so we can actually have a conversation. I don't really want this, I'm not teaching in this live. This is not a live for me to teach. I'm going to be expressing, I'm just going to be sharing my own perspective, sharing some of the things that I've just been noticing within myself, within the community. And yeah, I'm just taking this moment to just be honest about this particular thing. So I feel like there's a lot of feelings that we demonize as negative and don't actually fully grasp the polarity of emotions or feelings or energy, positive and negative. I always put that in quotation marks, because I feel like we really have to conquer this thing of this need to separate things. Nothing is separate, not the illusion is separation. Everything is integrated. So we have an emotional frequency scale, and this is something we have the shadow clinic, the 3-day shadow clinic that we have coming up in on the winter solstice as well. But one of the things that we'll be going into in depth, sorry, I was making sure I was putting my phone on silent. One of the things that I really want us to get into is exploring our emotional frequencies, both the higher vibrational aspects of the emotional frequency scale and the lower, you know, the things that make us feel good and the things that may not, because there's anchors to each level, or each level of our emotional frequency. Sometimes we don't actually pay attention to what those anchors are. We want to be able to skip over it and create a bridge and be like, no, well, just leave that over there and I want to go up there. No, it doesn't work like that. Transmutation actually means that you have to transmute something. Something has to be changed, right? Or something has to, you have to go through some, or literally go through to come out. It's nothing that you can really skip. So feelings like rage, feelings like hate, feelings like hurt, feelings like envy, feelings like disappointment, feelings like pain, feelings like shame, feelings like jealousy, feelings like guilt. These are the feelings that we often place on the negative, lower aspects of the frequency scale. But as I said, nothing is just coming out of this perspective of lower and higher. It's just a spectrum. This is a spectrum of energy that we have access to. And so we often demonize these expressions when they're displayed not only within other people, you know, when someone starts to get angry, or someone's a bit hateful, or someone's a bit jealous, or someone's a bit envious, you know, the first things to do is just demonize that. That's a negative emotion. That's negative, you're toxic. So you know, we've all got a load of these trigger and buzzwords that we're utilizing a lot of the times. But it also takes a level of shadow work to actually fully address these feelings within yourself, you know, where you may feel hurt, where you may feel envious, where you may feel jealous, where you may feel guilty. And that's important, because it's really easy to be able to identify these emotions in other people. But when it comes to ourselves, like, it takes going away, like doing a little journal, like it takes a lot to fully uncover that's actually what you're feeling. But these feelings are there, and these feelings are there for a reason. They have a trace, they have a purpose for being there, and it's important that we honor these dark feelings, these dark emotions, these dark aspects of ourselves, just as much as we honor the light aspects of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that we see ourselves merging into, that, you know, our highest potentials, all that kind of stuff. We also have to acknowledge the other side, the other polarity of that reality of ourselves. So we live in a world that only highlights and rewards the higher aspects or the higher vibrational aspects of our emotions and our vibrational frequencies. Feeling happy, feeling good, feeling joyful. And yes, those are all feelings that we all want to be able to experience. But I feel like it's there's, to each emotion, whether they are quote unquote lower or quote unquote negative, there's always within that sphere a lower and higher vibration that we can attune ourselves to. And that's actually how the emotional frequency works. The emotional frequency model, when you look at, for example, if you're feeling guilty, let me actually see if I can pull it up, because I've actually, in fact, I've got another booklet that is being developed for the Shadow Clinic, and I've included some documents. Hi Taz. I've included some images and exercises for you to do in regards to exploring the emotional frequency. But I'm just going to pull up a picture of what it actually looks like, so that here we go, so that you guys can have an idea of what it is that I'm talking about. So let me flip this round. Okay, right, so this is the emotional frequency scale. We can see that this is the lower aspect of the scale. We've got depression, powerlessness, insecurity, jealousy, revenge, rage, all of that. And then we've got the higher aspects of the scale, which deals with contentment, hopefulness, optimism, positive belief, all the way up to passion and appreciation and joy, knowledge, right? So say, for example, you're at a feeling of depression, right? You're feeling depressed, you're feeling a lot of grief, you're feeling fear, you're feeling really low, you feel like you can't get up. How you're able to raise yourself up the frequency scale is by looking at the next emotion up, right? So you're feeling powerlessness. What's the next thing? Insecurity. Why? Because whenever there's some type of let me just put this back. Whenever there's any type of whenever you're feeling at your lowest, right, there's some type of guilt or insecurity that you're experiencing that is actually pushing you down, because that's the lowest vibration on the frequency. So okay, what's the next thing do? Explore, okay, what is these insecurities that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling unworthy? What is this low self-worth that is pushing me into this victim state, into this space where I feel like I'm in this echo chamber of my own craziness in my own mind, like I telling me don't live, don't be here, don't, everyone hates you, you know how the mind can be sometimes. So that's the emotional frequency scale. So we have to allow ourselves to be totally real with ourselves, because if you say, oh my gosh, I'm feeling guilty about a particular thing, even for example, I've been speaking to my partner a lot about mum guilt and stuff like that, and these are things that I didn't even know was even a thing. It's only recently I'm starting to explore certain emotions and starting to come into certain terminologies, and I'm like, okay, this is quite interesting. Like this is actually something. And it's weird, because in your own mind you're thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm just, there's something wrong with me, No, there's other people being able that experience this natural emotion too. So I feel like we actually have to begin to normalize some of these lower vibrational emotions, even when we're speaking. Like, social media has become an echo chamber for these higher emotional frequencies. Everyone's trying to show their best life and be their best life, and really they're actually experiencing these lower dimensional frequencies. And it doesn't mean to say, oh, let's depress our timelines and tell the world how depressed we feel on whatever. No, all I'm saying is just, let's actually learn to be honest with some of the things that we actually feel. Hi, Adi Sony. Thank you. So yes, the reality is that we can't. It's not natural to exist on the highest vibrational frequencies all the time. It's not natural for someone to be happy all the time. It's not. I mean, if you're transmuting something, you know, it's you. Even then, you're transmuting from something to something. People often say, "Oh, you're quite peaceful," even when there's stressful things going on. I don't often get stressed. It often displays itself through my body, through chronic pain and stuff like that. But I'm not really a person to kind of display that stress a lot of the time, or attack people for no reasons and stuff like that. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that we all experience some type of lower emotion. So I experience anxiety sometimes. I experience quite depression from feeling alone, feeling like there's not many people on this path that I can really relate to and speak to, and feel like I'm not going crazy. You know, you guys, I can have these types of conversations and you guys can be like, oh my gosh, I've been feeling like that, but there's not many people that I can personally have these types of conversations with that I can bounce off, and I don't feel like I'm feeding information, but I'm actually being fulfilled myself. So yeah, Shalia just said, make being human celebrated. Yeah, for real, humanity is very, very real. Some of the emotions that we feel every day is very real. And I had to have a conversation with one of my clients, because you know, I often get this thing where it's like, oh yeah, you the way that you deal with things, I just want to get to your level. I'm like, okay, yeah, I may have a process to where I can deal with things, but it doesn't take away that I still deal with the same emotions and feelings and darkness that everyone else feels. So let's not try and put this whole perfect picture on a pedestal, like once you get to a place in your awakening or in consciousness that this shit is just gone. No, like this whole thing is about mastery of your mind. So mental health and all of those things, emotions, all of those things are always going to be included. So let's really kind of be mindful of that. When it comes to emotions, and I'll come back to some of your comments in a second, we have to, this is why I really love inner child therapy. There's a woman, I think I've mentioned her before, Alice Miller. Is it Alice Miller? Yeah, Alice Miller. Yes, Alice Miller. She was a psychoanalysis turned inner child therapist, and why I love her is because she also really tried to tear down some of the illusions within psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, one of which being the whole concept of forgiveness, and I will be getting into that a bit later, but I really advise you to look into a lot of her books, because the way that she it's her work over the last few years. I've been coming into her work a lot more, but it's really just deleted certain little clips in my mind that you know, you don't even realize how you can actually create karmic cycles in your life by just not addressing or acknowledging the reality of certain things, like how you feel. Like, it's okay, like for example, right now in this pandemic, it's okay to actually feel anxious and stressed. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what 2021 is going to bring me. I don't even know what 2020 is going to bring me. And sometimes it can feel very pressurizing, because you know, there is a bunch of us, me included, you know, I'm coming online and I'm like, you know, tap in, go forward, dude, just build business, and it's like, okay, but I feel like this, like I don't know how, and it's important because I've actually had a few conversations with content creators and also people within the same field, and and also activists and stuff. And obviously this year has been very active. Right now they're tired. I'm tired. I'm lucky I didn't kind of go out the way as much as I had intended to kind of go out, because I really just needed to value my time of just recuperating and resting and stuff, especially in light of everything that's been going on. But it's important that you don't feel like you have to fit in a mold where you know, you're putting, because I feel like a lot of people are putting on a mask. As much as they come online, you know, everything's good, like there's still another side. And this is why I try to be as honest, especially with some of the things that I'm trying to transmute, because I never want people to get it twisted. I'm a human being. I never class myself as a god. I never class myself as you know, someone greater than or whatever. I class myself as someone who's a student learning life just like everyone else, and I share what I learn on my journey, and that's what I intend to continue to do going forward. But let's begin to normalize humanity, because I feel like some of this it creates unnecessary pressure, especially on some of the leaders, right? Some of the people that are leading in the spiritual, psychological, mindset, finance. Like, I'm literally looking online, on YouTube, on Instagram, with my favorite content creators and influencers, and I'm like, they're tired. As much as they got a smile on their face, they are tired. I can feel like, especially in this time whilst Mercury is about to go retrograde, a lot of people, like, depression is literally resting on their shoulders. But it's kind of hard to fully acknowledge it, because it's like, oh my gosh, once you do, what happens? You break, you crack, you feel like you're losing yourself. And I feel like that's the biggest thing that a lot of people skip over and avoid in shadow work, is actually facing yourself when you feel like you're losing yourself. Because it's all good when you feel like you're in control. It's all good when you feel like, yeah, I've got momentum, like, yeah, I can, that mold, that mask is all good, no one will know what's going on. Like, no. But when you're actually in the middle of spiraling out of control, like your emotion, you don't know where you're going to, you're literally at rock bottom. Sometimes it's hard. We want to be able to skip out and get out of that as quick as possible. So then we find other escape mechanisms that distract us away from actually fully healing that wound. A lot of us are wounded soldiers on a battlefield. We cannot have wounded soldiers in a battle that is live. You're going to like literally kill yourself. So it's important that we really just be honest about this journey. We don't have I feel like it's crazy, because I feel like there's like this ideal that we present and we project out that you know, it's, even though, especially like obviously the occultic conscious community, we understand duality, we talk about this all the time, but I feel like in real time embodying it doesn't actually play out as or we don't fully integrate it as we think we're actually doing, so if that makes sense. But yeah, when it comes to dealing with your inner child, we all have a wound. We all have some type of wound. Our shadow self itself was formulated at the first point of a wound being created, some type of response to something that hurt, whether it was being in school in a game and you always being the last person to be picked or chosen in a team, or even if it was just one time, but internally that plucked a heartstring. It plucked something inside of you that you may not have fully addressed, and may not have even known that it was something to address, because some of us also, we don't come from families that have a foundation of emotional intelligence. So to be able to understand some of the things that we were actually feeling when we was a child, it's only in hindsight later on when you come onto videos like mine and different other psychology and mindset and spiritual videos, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I was actually going through abuse, I was going through this, I was going through that, because there was no reference point for us to be able to identify those things. So we all have some sort of wound, some sort of thing that then creates an unconscious sense of insecurity. And that insecurity in itself can travel or can follow us through our lives. Now, these doing shadow work, there's always a shadow that you're going to be facing up against. You don't just, there's not a point where you win. In fact, the goal isn't to win. There's no battle. You're not fighting something. You're actually just trying to integrate something. So when we begin to have that perspective to shadow work, yes, there's some parts that will need to be shed. There's parts of ourselves that don't serve us, or doesn't serve our highest potential. There's parts of us that serve our lowest potential. But it's for us to be able to understand that each feeling, each emotion, each whatever it is that we like to hide, that has to be honored. That has to be honored for real. And the movie Us in itself, like, is a perfect depiction of what happens if you continue to disassociate and slam the door in the face of your shadow. Because the shadow it's a living being. It exists too. It's just not existing in the form that you are existing in at this moment, but it exists through you, right? So when we want to be like, oh, that part of me doesn't live. Even I always use, for me especially, because I've grown up in a very conservative, I've had a conservative upbringing, because I've had, I came up for the church, and even kind of like in the culture of the church that we go in, I was speaking about the dress codes and stuff that they had us to wear. We couldn't have our hair in braids or thin braids. We had to have big ones because we couldn't look like the world. Like, it was really, really wild. There's a lot of stuff that took place, and that suppressed a lot of my personality. It suppressed a lot of my expression. It suppressed what I know myself to be. But I know that there's a sexual magnetic aspect of myself that is free. And only now that I'm able to fully begin to step in and explore and feel comfortable with that person. But without doing that necessary shadow work, I would continually disassociate from that urge to want to express my sexuality in the healthiest way for me. I would shut out that part. That part doesn't exist, but it wants to exist. It wants to live. And if it ends up becoming a war when I don't actually honor my shadow and honor its urge, its drive to live too. Just like I want to live free and be free, it wants to be free too. But we need to find a way of how we can work together. And that's why you guys, in the Inner Realms Academy, when we was doing the Triune Brain webinar, we were talking about Venom, and I use that as an example for the whole Wetico psycho spiritual reference of understanding that yes, this is a thing that can also have rule over you unconsciously, subconsciously, if you don't learn how to set the boundaries with it. Like, for example, my shadow, I've always had this sexual part of myself, but what did it end up doing negatively? It ended up attracting sexual situations that I didn't actually want to engage in. But I hadn't learned to fully honor my will and my ability that I can say no. It's my body. It took a journey for me to fully step into that. So I ended up experiencing having a lot of sexual encounters that I didn't actually want to have, but simply because I didn't actually say no. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to in fact, I was actually, in my head, I had it that I was disappointing someone. There was this whole thing of disappointment. I didn't want to disappoint if I said no. So I had to go through a whole process of you know, reprogramming my mindset and my perception towards how I say no. And you know, when I say no, that doesn't you have a right to say no. No one has a right over you to say what you should do and what you shouldn't do. So as I was saying, that attracted negative aspects or magnetized negative aspects of my sexuality, that really was calling me to address that part of myself. No, you're powerful enough to say no. No one, you are not a slave. You're not someone that just lays down and takes it. You know, that's not you. But now I'm learning how I can, and there was another thing as well, because one of the things that also, especially for women, and I'm sure a lot of you can also relate with this feeling, the psychology that creates is that, oh my gosh, if I dress sexual, if I show cleavage, if I do that, then that in itself is giving it's given an okay, it's given permission, and if anything happens, that's justified because I dress like that. No. That psychology needs to be dealt with too. So there's a lot that we have to really be real with when it comes to how we feel and our emotions, and just make sure, and our urges, our impulses, right? Some of the things that we have impulses and urges to do and create and experience, these have to be honored. They're coming from a particular place. So I'm just going to check your messages before I continue to go forward. So true. I had an ex come back into my life recently, and I had to completely let go because all signs point to them being my portal twin, and I can't ignore it. We needed to go back to move forward. Yeah, be careful with them karmic partners, because they can keep you in loops too. So definitely be careful. Feel, deal, heal, all equally important. Definitely. We must learn to be comfortable with sharing our truths. Absolutely. I don't think most do, unless they are cult leaders. Yep, I think so too. Suppress emotional emotion. Yeah. It's what we do with the information that counts towards the healing process. Definitely. Taz is my shadow. Oh, that's your alter ego. Yeah, your shadow is also your alter ego. Like, just like Beyonce and Sasha Fierce, she's actually channeling her shadow as her alter ego. We all have an alter ego. We all have a part of ourselves that wants to be a Beyonce or wants to be a this or whatever. Like, we idolize certain aspects in people. Because we recognize and we see that reflection within us. We're like, oh, that's something that awakens something in me. Like, I see myself, whether if it's not just how I'm in my current state, but I see something in you. Whether you could, in fact, some of these idols that you could be looking at literally could be a reflection of who you were, like past life karmic experiences, and it's something just awakening you that's just like, something resonates, right? That's your soul memories now being awakened. Become the dominant. Yep, you are special enough to say no. Why can't you say no if they get to say yes? Exactly. And that's important. That's something I had to really learn how to do, because it's there was that whole programming of, especially in church, like they have that whole thing of to please the man. Same thing with Eve, and that was the battle between us. In fact, that was the battle with Lilith and Adam. You know, Lilith weren't having it. She's like, listen, I'm not here to just please you and just be submissive to you for the sake of just being submissive. And it's not even the fact, this is the thing as well I want to say as well, because there is another aspect of Eve and Lilith is both necessary. Both traits is necessary. The submissiveness, like not to be a slave or underneath, but there's some level of submission that allows us to actually relate. You know, if we're continually going over our partners, you know, there's no point that we can actually relate. But yeah, I'm just glad that there's a level that I could unlock within myself to be like, no, you are worthy. That all came from self-worth. That came from low self-worth, low self-esteem. And I really had to begin to build myself up again and be like, listen, you are just as worthy. Like, no one has, who are you to just be laying down and just be a container for someone else? You wasn't born for that. That was not your purpose in life. And you know, this is something I'm being very transparent about, because this is something in especially within women that we experience. We talk about consensual rape and stuff like that. It's actually really a thing, and it's not you know, there are some people who will turn around and just change their minds just because, you know, they kind of realized or whatever. No, but there are some real life experiences where people just mentally struggle and don't know how to say no. They hadn't had that building inside them to from their parents, from those around you, to actually be like, you know what, you're worthy enough, you know, you're actually really worthy. So let me just check some of your messages again. Hi Ocean. Don't give your power away is the key, and know when you're being gaslit. Listen, know when you're being gaslit, for real, because I actually in fact, that's important, because there was a major experience that I had that really broke my reality, and is that I was actually being gaslit by a partner, an ex-partner. And I've gone through a lot of sexual abusive experiences, so I wasn't really comfortable with my sexuality at that time. I wasn't comfortable exploring, doing certain things, and he knew this. But I also this is when I began to develop fibromyalgia, so my body just wasn't the same. I wasn't able to do things the same or whatever. And he ended up cheating on me, and made that the reason as to why he did. Now, again, with what I was saying earlier about, you know, there's always a mirror, and you know, I'm not someone to always see myself as the victim in a situation. You know what, he's also entitled to what he desires and what he wants, but part of that was also gaslighting, because he was trying to basically bring me into a realm that I wasn't really ready to experience. And there was no honor there, because it was like, okay, if you do this, then and do what I like and all of that kind of stuff, then, you know, that's when you're loved. And that whole codependency was a real thing that I had to deal with, because I would have personally stayed trapped in some of those toxic situations had I not actually taken the moment to be like, listen, girl, you have value. Like, you are very you're more valued than all of these types of experiences that you're experiencing. So, like, fix up. I had a guy who slapped my ass, couldn't help himself because I was in shorts. A female's response was, well, you was in shorts. I'm like, no, this cannot be accepted for females to think and advise. No, you don't go into Africa and, you know, have those types of experience, like, or indigenous places. Like, women are not sexualized like that. It's only in Western countries, America, like Europe, UK, we sexualize women a lot more. In fact, and that's how we end up sexualizing children. Like, it's not that's another topic. I'm gonna leave that for today. But we sexualize our children because we actually sexualize women. Like, our whole perception to that is just I even had my own mother when I one of the reasons it took me so long to actually speak about my sexual abuse that had happened when I was a child was because she had said, oh, you must have deserved it, like, you was wearing a skirt and this, and it's like, hold on, like, regardless, like, nothing should justify someone enforcing their themselves on me. Like, no one has that permission to be able to do that. Oh, dude, oh, don't worry, Trina. Working with the elements has helped me balance it all. Definitely, it definitely helps. um it's interesting because I saw a talk from Lisa Nichols saying a lot of us struggle to step into our power and grow because we're holding on to who we were in so many ways we don't realize. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Submission is your true power. Learning how to use it gives so much power. Yeah. So I realized, well, I really need to go through things I'm hanging onto from some unhealthy times, scrapbooks, clothes, etc., because keeping that energy is blocking me. Listen, hoarding, all of that type, that's Taurus traits in itself. Where you have attachments. In fact, look into your Taurus in your charts, or even Venus. It shows where you have attachments or where you attach too much. Taurus in particular, because, and I'm Venus and Mercury in Taurus, so I have a lot of sentimental attachments to things that I've had to like really deal with. But that energy just keep that every item, every even certain feelings that you hold on to or things that you haven't even addressed. You know, there's certain conversations that you may need to be able to have with some people, but you don't hold it, you don't have it, you hold on to it. And then that in itself can create illness. It can create disturbances. It can even project into your physical algorithms, your physical reality in itself. So yeah, I always struggle with conformity. Yeah. Me too. But we can only submit to people that care and keep us exactly, and that's the key, especially when it comes to men who want women to be able to submit. There has to be some type of grounding or foundation or level of nurture, respect. There has to be some kind of foundation for me to be able to submit to you. It's not going to happen just like that. Hi Kathy, hi Carlos. Those 80 movies had her sexual harassment as the running joke. That has messed up so many people's way of thinking. It really has. And it's there was a lot of things that was justified and just made okay, and this is why this whole information age is powerful, because we have something that the last generation didn't have. They didn't really have access to this level of information, especially when it comes to mental health and personal development, growth, evolution, all of those different types of things. They had access, but like, I feel like how we're able to do things now, look how stuff like narcissism and toxicity and emotional intelligence, all of these little buzzwords have now become buzzwords. They weren't buzzwords back then because nobody knew what the fuck they were. Nobody knew what effective, like, who talking about shadow work, who would have known what the fuck shadow work is? It's only in the last few years that people have begun to look more into psychology. Carl Jung, you know, Jungian psychology, astrology. I really think astrology has had like a big hand in the mental health shift or mental health awareness of people now, because obviously people are now looking at the moon, the influences of the moon, and obviously how that impacts psychology. When you go in and you're doing these readings, I mean, you're looking at people talking about the transits and stuff, unless it's a particular mundane astrologer or mundane intuitive, they're going to mainly be talking about the psychology and how psychology works. So I feel like we're more privileged in that aspect to have more access to information, even through social media. Social media has made it easier to have access to these types of information. You know, I'm sure a good few years ago, some of the things that you're coming into now, even some of the things that I may have mentioned on this live, would have not known what that is. Like, I would have been just talking over a lot of people's heads. But now, you know, you're starting to have something to be able to relate to and connect to. So going back onto what I was talking about, the inner child, and looking at some of the unconscious the unconscious feelings of insecurity, and that becomes created at the moment where the shadow is created, where a wound is created, and how that begins to follow someone throughout their life. The problem is that when we grow older, we're programmed to disassociate from our inner child. And this has been so weird, because this whole week I've had like this weird it's been dealing with my inner child in a very interesting way, because we're adults, right? We're an adult, but we all have this inner child, and this creates a dichotomy, because it's like, okay, even though I have these feelings, like I was talking to my partner the other day, and I was talking about things like I was talking about love, and how my somehow shame and guilt had been attached to love, or the expression of love. So for example, if I talk about love in a deep way, or talking about my feelings, there's this little girl that comes up, and it's like, shouldn't really, like, that's a little girl thing, like you need to grow up and talk about something like not from a not from some playground perspective. Like, that's that battle between the inner child and the adult. And it's like, if you actually had a young child in front of you that was reflective of your inner child, going through the exact same feelings that you may be feeling, you would have compassion for that child. But we disassociate from the compassion within ourselves. Some of the feelings that we feel, we down it, just like I was saying, you know, like, shouldn't be feeling like that, need to grow up, like that's not a real feeling. Who told us that? Where did we get that from? Like, if that's a real feeling, if you feel that, that's coming from somewhere. And so that also needs to be honored, right? Our inner child needs to be honored just as much as we honor this adult brain. What does the Bible say? To be as children, to be as be as children. That innocence in itself, it keeps us light on our feet. That's my inner child. I'm telling you, I really encourage you to do some inner child healing. One of the things that I did to really help me was, I had purchased, now my son actually has it now because he loves it, but I had a little dog, rainbow dog, that I was given by my godmother. And this created my mum actually threw this actual dog away. I had a lot of attachments to this because I loved it. It was a really beautiful, like, rainbowy dog, but my godmother passed away when I was 7 years old. So the dog, and she had another book, like a nursery rhyme book. Those are very sentimental things for me that I just cherished. Even as I grew older, I just cherished it because that was a gift that was given to me by my godmother. So what I did was, I actually bought a similar, I mean, it wasn't the same as how many years later, because 30, because I know, yeah, 30 years later, because it was given to me when I was a baby. But I bought the same dog, and I just went through a process of just holding this dog and letting this be a reflection of my inner child. And I was just talking to that dog as if it was myself, taking myself back into a little time machine, back to my child self, back into my old home, into some of the memories that I was experiencing. But I was having to reframe my perspective of how I saw those experiences, because I'm now the adult, right? I'm no longer the child. So the child now needs to learn from the adult, right? But the adult also needs to learn from the inner child. So there's, again, this integrative experience is taking place inside, where we're not disassociating from ourselves or from our inner child wounds. But those inner child wounds are the anchors within our frequencies. They're the anchors, the little, think of it like, you know, like split ends, right? Or like your hair is, when your hair is unhealthy, it has like those little cracks in between, so it can't actually maintain moisture. That's what happens to our emotional frequency scale inside. There's little cracks in between that doesn't allow energy to flow as it needs to flow, because there's these little cracks and these little things that have density in them. Like, it needs to be cleared out, it needs to be purged out, so that energy can just flow smoothly, as smoothly as possible. So yeah, we're learning not to slam the door on our shadow. We're learning not to close out some of these dark feelings and some of these low negative. Again, I really want you guys to really learn this quotation thing. Like, it's just an element, a part of the spectrum that we're experiencing, right? These lower emotions, guilt, fear, even that fear is an illusion in itself. That's one of the lowest vibrations, that's one of the lowest vibrations on the scale, yet it's an illusion. Fear is false evidence appearing real. But it's one of the things that we give the greatest, we give fear power. Fear actually has no power by itself. That's why the Bible even says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. This is talking about your dark night of the soul. It's just a shadow. So a lot of the times when you're going through psychic attacks and stuff like that, it's just a shadow, right? It's a shadow of death. In fact, it's a shadow or foreshadow or what may have happened in another timeline. These are sometimes the stuff that happens within our current timeline isn't even connected to this actual timeline. It's from other shit that's just mungled in, and your brain is just just taking an opportunity of which one am I going to pick. We spoke about this in the Triune Brain webinar. If you guys go onto the Inner Realms Academy, if you join the Inner Realms Academy, you'll have access to that webinar. But we really wanted to begin to explore the things that happens within the mind. The mind is a very complex place, but it's one of the most places that we actually need to be paying attention to. Everything, spirituality is created from the mind. Can also be an illusion as well. So like, it's weird because I'm a quote unquote spiritualist who also has quite a balanced enough mind to understand the science of everything as well. Like, spirituality is just science. It's not magic, it's nothing supernatural. Everything is science. It's simulated. It's just is what it is. So yeah, we have to make sure that we don't close the door and continue to denounce the existence of our shadow, because it wants to exist. It wants to build. It wants to have fuel on the other side too. So again, taking into consideration the movie Us, as it reflects just like that. Now that's why the shadow itself is reflective of the archetype or the sign, the zodiac sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is the underworld. It's Hades, the world of Hades. But Scorpio, being a water sign, this is also representative of the underwater volcanoes, right? So you can act like those bubbles that you see on the sea is a mystery. That steam ain't coming from somewhere. There's some real depth, right? We all have Scorpio in our chart, so we all have an underworld. We all have something that's bubbling, something that is quite mysterious, quite hidden, quite embedded in deep within our psyche, deep within our subconscious. But understand that these feelings, I call these feelings steam, right? The steam ain't coming from nowhere. There's why I'm talking about the steam. There was this or why I'm talking like this is there in Dominica, they had this black steam coming out of the sea. Now obviously, because of the studies that I've been doing, not a lot of people know that there is an underwater volcano underneath the Caribbean, which is also waking up alongside a lot of the other volcanoes with America and the Ring of Fire. So in Dominica, they had somebody took a picture of the sea, and there was like this black steam coming out of the sea, and that's from the volcano. and then there was like some bubbling on the thing, and people were like, what is it, what's that, I don't know what that is. Underwater volcano. And the government is not actually saying that. They're all carrying on like, oh, we don't know what that is. These times earthquakes coming in quick every day in Dominica. I'm looking at it literally every day, and these people are just so wicked. These governments are so wicked. But use that as an example. Yeah, like, you can't ignore what's about to happen, right? It will explode at some point, right? So we have to deal with the rumbles, whatever's rumbling deep inside, whatever. And I, especially as I'm a Scorpio dominant, but a Gemini sun and an 8th house sun. So Gemini can sometimes have this thing where because Sagittarius is his opposite. Sagittarius likes to find the higher ground. Gemini likes to understand from his experiences, and this is why it can always find the two sides and, you know, rationalize the situation. But that in itself, whilst the North Node is in Gemini, we also have the North Node in Gemini. So this is something we all need to be aware of in regards to our minds, how we may skip over some of the depths, some of the unconscious, because also we have Neptune in Pisces. That is the unconscious. In fact, my God, when I start talking about the marine kingdom and some of the bullshit that takes place in that, in terms of the people's influence to their unconscious, you'll start to see what I mean. But we have to make sure that we're aware of everything that's taking place within us, whether it's from us or whether it's even being put in us as well. Like, there's real life right now, like the amount of people that are struggling, that I've had people struggling with auditory hallucinations. I've got 24 seconds left on this live. I'm literally about to shut this down and set up another live, so you guys join me on the other side. I'm literally just going to shut this down and start back up if I can.